the network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
Ready.
AVWeek.
Performing scan.
Week.
Online.
This is AVWeek. AVWeek.
This is AV Week, your weekly wrap-up of audiovisual news and information. My name is Tim Albright. I am your host. With us to talk about all said news and information. First and foremost, buddy, pal, and one of the smartest programmers that I know on this planet. His name is Dave Hatz, and he's from AVI Systems. Good afternoon, sir.
Hey there, Tim. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Also with us, actually, didn't know how I did this, but we have two fabulous underwriters. First and foremost, from grand old Ireland, his name is Ed Morgan from Display Note. Hello, sir.
Hey, Tim. How are you?
Good. For our time zone deficient folks, what time is it there?
It has just gone 1 minute past 7 p.m.
7 p.m. So
Yeah.
Dave and I are in the real time zone. That would be the central.
Okay.
Port George is on the eastern. So 7 into 1 is 6 hours ahead of us. So
Correct.
there you are. And
So
I mentioned...
I'm 1 hour closer to a beer than...
Yes, you're 6
sorry,
hours closer.
7 hours closer to a beer.
Yes.
Yeah, I remember the last time flying back from Ireland. It was a 6-hour flight, and we actually landed a minute before we took off.
See, that's cool. Stuff like that's cool.
Yeah.
That voice, for those of you listening, is George Fournier. George is from FSR. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, sir. Glad to be here.
Absolutely. Okay, so we're going to start this episode off and this show with a story that I debated with our team whether or not to do it. Kaleidescape, and you'll understand why as I get into it. We'll show you here there's a story from Engadget. There's also a really good interview with Julie Jacobson that she did with CE Pro with the CEO of Kaleidescape that we'll post on the show's page. Really great interview with the CEO. Actually, I think that got picked up by Fortune magazine and their website. But Kaleidescape is shutting down. If you're not familiar with Kaleidescape, it's a high-end movie player, but it's also a streamer. And I hesitate using the word streamer, but that is what it has ended up being. Except it's a high-end one. It's a bit for bit. It is a pure, oh my gosh, if you want the best representation, the best, highest quality movie player in the business, this is the one you got. For those of you in commercial, the CEOs that you deal with, if they had a home system, this is the one they had, right? There's a lot of things going on in the background here and the reasons why, and like I said, I'll post the different articles that have been published about this kind of shutting down. Couple things that came at us and a couple of reasons why. Number one, you had a long-term fight with the MPAA and Hollywood over digital rights management, and eventually Kaleidescape lost that lawsuit. Second thing you had is you had a player that is a premium product. Think Lamborghini. Think high-end sports cars. This is that version of that. Dave, we're going to start with you on this one. From your sense and from your standpoint, I guess the first question is why did Kaleidescape, fail to make a business of this?
Well, I mean, I'll start by saying, I work primarily in the commercial environment, so I've run across Kaleidescapes a couple times, but like you say, most often it's when we're dealing with the residences of the CEO of our companies. So I haven't, had as much firsthand experience as many, but as I look at this, I really think it's a company that just didn't adapt properly over the last 15 to 20 years. That they were really focused on, their vision was being the highest quality and a very premium product. And I'm not sure that they were able to keep, in trend with, the consumerization of the AV market space that is trickling into that high-end residence. That I know, the residences I've dealt with, we're getting requests to put in Apple TVs, consumer devices, and to put in Rokus, and to put in the same thing that they see and their friends see. And yes, it's a high-end system. There's certainly an expectation of high quality, but the question really becomes, does that person really understand the difference in quality from the highest end Kaleidescape on down to something that's much more moderately priced, and they hear publicized on the news reports and in the media and in the stores they go to. And so, I look at it as a company that might not have adapted the way they should have.
Well, and to be clear, I mean, there were lower end priced Kaleidescapes. You could get into some somewhere in the neighborhood of $3,000 to $5,000, depending on the level. That's not a Roku. Today.
And that's the problem, is that $3,000 to $5,000 being the economy model is a lot different than $250 or $300 being the economy model.
$100? Are you kidding me?
$100
I can get a Roku right now. Run out and grab one for $85. I can get a Google Chromecast for $45 or $35.
Yeah, Fire Stick. I think I picked one up today. It was like $30. And as soon as this podcast is over, I'm going downstairs to sideload as many streaming apps as I can. But that's the price that they're. No, they weren't even competing against it. It was They probably never saw them as competition, but ultimately they were.
Well, we'll get into this after I get George's 2 cents, but let's talk about that very thing. George, first of all, from the manufacturer side, what do you see as some of the factors here in Kaleidescape going away?
Personally, I feel that was exactly what we mentioned earlier. It's just they didn't have their finger on the pulse of what was going on. It's like having a Bentley and saying, okay, well, people who buy Volkswagens are going to buy a Bentley. It's like, no. It's the market is becoming anybody. You can find kits online now to build your own Siri type home system. You can basically, kids are being taught in high school to how to write code and build their own streaming services and their own PCs and their laptops and their tablets and all this other stuff. So the machinery is almost becoming slowly secondary. And for the service that they provided, and considering all the battles that they went through and all this stuff, people started getting nervous, I would say, about dealing with them in the first place because of all the lawsuits and everything that was going on. So their customer loyalty and then being at the top dollar range at the same time, I think there were two battles that they didn't fight very well.
And let me bring in something that Ed brought up, the fact that you can pick up a streamer for $30. And it's something that I actually wrote a piece for CE Pro about the Amazon Echo. And I'm going to bring in Amazon in this. I'm going to bring in Chrome and Google into this, and a little bit of Apple as well. But they don't appear to do as good of a job as those two companies. And that is this wonderful buzzword of analytics and big data.
Sure.
There's a reason an Amazon Echo is less than $200. There's a good chance that it costs less than what it cost Amazon to make. We know for a fact that the Amazon Fire is that way. Amazon Fire costs about $220 to $230, depending on which report you read, to produce, to actually manufacture, and they sell it for $100 to $150. It's a loss leader. Same thing with the Chrome. It's a loss leader. Why is it a loss leader? It's a loss leader because they're getting data on you and then turning around and selling it or using it, right, in Amazon's case, to sell you things, right?
Exactly.
So, go ahead, George.
No, I mean that's a perfect point. Is that you have Amazon Prime. Mm-hmm. You're paying. It was originally floated out to people. Okay, you get better shipping or you get better delivery time. Well, now it comes with free video.
Mm-hmm.
So you're paying. And so people are willing to pay. Yeah, they only pay $150 for that Fire Stick, but then they pay $90 a year for Prime, and they've got the full system.
Yep.
And they're getting good content.
Original content. I mean, they're starting to do.
Well,
They have their cadre of content that they have access to, rights and agreements with. But they're starting to produce their own content that are winning Emmys. They're doing competing directly with Netflix for that.
yeah, and without having to be as blatant as putting a commercial up every 5 minutes, like broadcast TV
Or Hulu.
or Hulu. You know, they've got that captive audience now that says, you know what, I'm going to go to Amazon first to look for this stuff. It's their first stop, and it's slowly becoming embedded. It's, you know, as we said before we started, is that, you know, I just put a Roku player in my house, and the first two things we put on there was Netflix and Amazon Prime. You know, I haven't had to add anything else. I added NASA TV this week was the third thing I put on there. But it's, you know, I don't think I've turned my Blu-ray player on in two months.
Yeah, going back to Kaleidescape, you know, it almost reads like the opening chapter of The Innovator's Dilemma. You know, you can hear the CEO saying, "Well, our customers don't want to buy a low-end streaming device. It's a high-end. That's our target audience. They're our customers." But yet, slowly or surely, as you mentioned, Tim and guys, those customers were buying the Rokus, or are buying the Rokus, the Fire Sticks, the Chromes, the Apple TVs, and suddenly here's a company with, you know, a very small customer base and no money left.
Something I suggested on Resi Week this week is that they may want to, or whoever purchased them, let's be honest, Kaleidescape as it sits is in mothballs right now. Very recent mothballs, but still mothballs nonetheless. The folks that were on Guy Fennemer from Access Networks and Matt Scott from our team, they were bandying back and forth who should buy them, who should purchase them. And I made the comment, I said, they should just go for the gusto. They should own who they are. I mentioned Lamborghini and Bugatti and high-end sports cars. I made the comment, I said, they should they should make one product, they should make it damn good, and sell it for $1 million, right?
Mm-hmm.
And just own who they are. If you've got this, it's like having a Fabergé egg, right? Is the digital and electronic version of a Fabergé egg. So I have no idea whoever's going to purchase them will take us up on it, but they should do that. So.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, I kind of put my marketer's hat on, and
yeah.
You know, with any business, there's three kind of strands. You get your customers, keep them, and grow them. And the only way they could grow them is, as you just pointed out, is to up the revenues and own who they are. You know, there is a finite amount of customers for their product, like a Lamborghini, like a Ferrari. So they should own that space and charge a premium.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's talk about for a second about training. This is the second time in a week that Mr. Hatch has been on our air, and so I appreciate that. But I want to take a couple different angles of this. I mentioned the fact because Dave did a show for us for our State of Control, our programming show about programming. The story we're going to use is from from AV Magazine, talking about Harman's and AMX's programming or training in Norway. And I want to get into it this way because we're starting to get a lot of different international shows popping up, and we as the U.S. and North American media for AV are starting to pay attention more, and I think we should. I really do. I honestly believe that because there are things that happen outside the States that impact our market, impact our integrators, but also it's very interesting, right? It's unique approaches to AV, it's unique approaches to training, it's unique approaches to solving problems that the integrators have on a daily basis. And I want to start with you, Ed, because you actually have you sit in an interesting position. DisplayNote, I mentioned the fact that you're my buddy from Ireland because that's where DisplayNote is.
Mm-hmm.
But you guys have not only dealers all across the world, but you have agreements. You guys go to various shows. One of the first time I saw you was at Infocom, but the next time I saw you was in Amsterdam at ISE.
Mm-hmm.
And you guys were presenting and you were interacting and connecting with different folks. From your standpoint, as from a U.S. based integrator, you're a foreign company, but other places you're not. You're just over in Ireland.
Yeah.
How do you guys deal with connecting with folks in different countries and getting those disparate AV professionals trained and learning about your product?
Good question, and sometimes it's not very easy. I think over the years, you get to learn an understanding, even how different regions operate culturally. So for you guys in the US, you're pretty much always dealing with US customers, and you know the culture and you know how the lay of the land and the landscape. Where what would work for us in Norway would not work for us in the Middle East, and would not work in Japan or Australia. So we really have to get a sense of how your integrators, resellers, and distributors, what's the cultural considerations when dealing with them. So, e.g., in the Nordics or in Scandinavia, you would have to be much more professional and on time compared to, say, Australia, where everything is a bit like Ireland, and it's okay. You can be a bit more relaxed. And that's just culturally.
You just compared Ireland to Australia. I'm not sure which one is more offended at this point, but go ahead.
I think we should both be. Versus the Middle East, where everything is hurry up and wait, play that game. So you need an understanding culturally of each area, each region, and how they like to be presented to, and how they adopt systems, and even how they work through things like government tenders and procurement. So again, completely different to the Middle East, where I'm pretty sure I went to Kuwait about 7 years ago to present on a government tender, and I heard last week that it's still running.
7 years ago?
Yeah, and they still haven't decided who's going to get the bid.
Yes.
So yeah, again, totally different mindset from region to region where it differs. I think you guys in the US have a better, know the lay of the land. There's not too many cultural differences to factor in.
All right, George, we're bringing you on this one too. Again, from the manufacturer's standpoint, how do you deal with it? How do you deal with the various, like Ed said, the various cultures and the various nuances?
Right. We're still learning. It's good. We believe last count we're in over 60 different countries now, and almost every single one is treated completely differently.
Mm-hmm.
We've been running into the same thing in the Middle East, where some of our bids are going on double-digit years that they've been in process, and we sell a unique amount of equipment where it goes anywhere from metal for infrastructure type products and electronics. Yeah. So sometimes it's easier for the metal products to actually get into some of these places than the electronics because of CE ratings or UL ratings or MET ratings and that type of thing. So there's sometimes that we can't sell into certain areas. We have an extensive rep network in the United States where, but overseas, some of the reps are actually, we would consider a classical distributor.
Okay.
And some you'd even think we're an integrator, because they're actually, they're bringing the product in, marking it up so it covers their VAT and all their other pricing and all their other border crossing fees and all this other stuff, so that they can still make a profit on it and still get it into where they need to go. Mm-hmm. And it's so unique. It's a challenge. It's a great challenge because they're proactively reaching out to us. We've had some reps in Germany area who have come up with some great ideas on how to demo our control products and stuff like that to make it truly transportable, because they can go from country to country the same way we go from state to state. And
in the EU specifically.
In the EU specifically, yes, yeah. Yes, and it's been a great learning experience and great exchange, and it's opened up a lot of it. And just as we were talking about a little bit earlier, is Google Hangouts and some of this stuff has shortened that bridge as well. So it's been some late nights where I've been jumping on video calls to do some quick training with these people, or we try to get them to come to InfoComm a little bit early so that we can lock them in a room and cram some training into them quickly. Yeah. Like the way that AMX is building this area or Harman, I should say, is doing this is some great opportunities, and it's something that I think all manufacturers that want to compete in those markets really need to keep an eye on.
Real quickly before I move on with Dave, the CE and the UL ratings and stuff like that you do for here in the States, right, do any of those translate to other areas, to other regions of the world?
Some do. We specifically do use ETL, which is like a UL type of lab, so our stuff will get UL, US, and Canada at the same time. So many times a lot of those products will be accepted in Canada and Mexico, Latin America very easily. Going across the pond, though, that's usually a little bit harder, so we've started using some of our partners. We use MET. And basically when you have an MET rating on it, that's almost accepted pretty close to being globally, except for the United States. The United States accepts it, but they're still learning about it. And
like the metric system.
Yeah, exactly. It has it meets all the UL requirements, it meets all the public safety requirements, it meets all that stuff. But people, you go MET and they go, huh? And it's an interesting.
You want to see the UL stamp on it, though.
Exactly. But once you explain to them, okay, it's UL number this, it's MET number this, it's CSA number that, then they go, oh, okay, now we got it.
We've even found that. Sorry, I got injured. Some features in products will be accepted in one region or one country and not in another. So, I'll give you an example. One of our apps allowed you to export PDF files to Dropbox, and we were told, this is after release, in France we don't like Dropbox and we won't use Dropbox. Therefore, we're not going to use this product.
Wow. Okay then.
Yeah. So even like things like that, again, as a small startup, as we were 4 or 5 people, we didn't have the kind of R&D and research arm to go and find out what is Dropbox accepted in France. Do they like it?
So what do they use? I'm sorry. What do they use?
I think they used. Google's pretty well accepted. Drive. Yeah. A lot of Drive. I think Google have a couple of huge offices in France, Paris. But yeah, Dropbox, we were told, no, we're not using it.
There you go.
Yeah, because we ran into sort of along that lines. In the metal side is our table boxes. A lot of our boxes work very well. They're designed around American power connectors. Yep. Well, the second you put a European connector in there, you lose 3/4 of the size of your box. It's a very large area. So we actually had one integrator who didn't care. He was actually taking our boxes and he would bend his own metal for the inside brackets. Mm-hmm. And he came back to us and said, look, this is the way I think it would work better, and we've built some product around it that's just been amazing. But it was something that we didn't really consider over here, because we're like, okay, let's cram as much stuff into the box as possible, and then you're like, okay, well, now your connector's 4 inches by 4 inches. What do? You're like, ooh, I just lost 3/4 of my box.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and from the other side too is you've got. Kramer is the one that comes to the top of my head, but other manufacturers, and Dave, I want to bring in this to you. You have Kramer, you have Sennheiser, you have Barco, you have Bosch, these are the ones that just off the top of my head that have coming to mind that are non-U.S. based manufacturers, have a significant presence, at the InfoComm show and here in the States. How do they do coming the opposite way, right? I'm asking, George and Ed from their standpoint, but from coming the opposite way, coming into the States, how do these guys do it, and others, when it comes to training folks here in the States?
It's manufacturer by manufacturer specific. Some succeed much better than others. There's times where the documentation set, I'll use as an example. Many manufacturers, you get the US documentation, you get the EU documentation, you get the Australia documentation, and there's there's little specific pieces that are geared towards the audience. Others, you get the one set of international documentation, and it might be more focused on an EU company, it might be more focused on an Asian company, depends on whether you can interpret it in the US or not. I mean, I would say the majority of the brands that we work with, it translates pretty well to the US. I think a large part it's because the US market is such, a large portion, even if it's not half, it's at least a third, I would imagine, of most of these major manufacturers. And so, they have, in their initial planning, I think I see that they target the US as a key market. For other companies, that start out, more homegrown in the U.S., looking to go expand globally, that's where I can certainly, see the challenges that, Ed and George have been talking about. That, you start out small, you grow, you start out as a regional company in the U.S., then you grow a few more states, and eventually you become across the majority of the U.S. Well, then now you've got to take that next step and continue to grow, and it's a big step. Where I see a lot of the companies that are already based internationally, some of those challenges they've already conquered because across different regions of the EU as an example, that they're taking that into account from the beginning as they're growing their company, and so coming to the U.S., it's just another step. And I don't want to diminish that by any means.
Yeah.
You guys can tell me I'm off base on that, but I think that the majority of the companies I've run into really do a good job with it.
Yeah, and a lot of that comes down to their infrastructure here in the States. And I'm going to make the assumption that from Ed and George's standpoint, the same thing holds true going the other way, right? Ed coming from Ireland and going to other ones, and George coming from New Jersey and going to other places. The infrastructure here in the States, at least in country, is incredibly important. You look at the companies that I mentioned, Sennheiser and Kramer, two companies that I'll pick on. Pick on's the wrong word, but I'll kind of highlight. These are companies that have infrastructures in place here. They have reps here. They have training here. They have offices here, right? From folks coming outside in, the same thing I would assume is true. And we'll talk about EU for a second. George mentioned the fact that in the European Union, you can go to country like we do here, state to state. There's that agreement, and I'm not picking on Ed being in Ireland and the whole Brexit thing, but once you have a presence, I know it wasn't Ed, but once you have a presence, somewhere in Central Europe, then you can do that. The one nice thing that I've learned by going to ISE the last couple of years, is the infrastructure that's in place from all these various manufacturers. Some have an office in Amsterdam or just outside of Amsterdam in the Netherlands. Some have it in France, right? Because to them that's more central. Some in Germany, but from there they can go out, and they may have 2 or 3 satellite offices, but they have a presence in Europe for the very reason that George mentioned, the fact that you can kind of pop around and service that entire region. So it's kind of neat, and it's kudos to Amex for doing that. But yeah, that's kind of neat that you're able to do that, and it's not entirely identical to the States, but it's very, very similar. So.
Well, and I have to assume that it also shows the local integrators, the local consumers, that manufacturer does care about their market. Yep. That in this case, Harman going into Norway, it reinforces that they're a brand that respects that marketplace and wants to be considered a key player in that marketplace.
Right.
Yeah, totally agree.
Mm-hmm. All right, guys, we're up against it here. We were going to do a story about holograms and AR, but I'll post it on the page, and you can chuckle as you will. So, gentlemen, thank you so much, Mr. Ed Morgan. Thank you, brother.
Thanks, Tim. Thank you very much.
Where can people find you or DisplayNote?
DisplayNote.com or at DisplayNote.
At DisplayNote on the Twitters. Mr. Fournier, thank you, sir.
Oh, thank you for having me, sir.
I'm gonna pick on George for a second. George does something called AV Gives Back, and if you're on Facebook, find George and find that group, because they do a lot of good work. So that's my plug for you. You go ahead and tell folks how to find FSR and how to find you.
Well, thank you, sir. AV Gives Back has been a fun little hobby that's been going on, and we're working hard to try to keep growing it. And it's really just to help other charities other people's projects, get the word out. Everybody, every integrator, every manufacturer has some kind of give back that they do, and just help get that message out is what we try to do with it. And we've been getting some great support from AVNation and from everybody in the industry, and it's really been, we really appreciate it. Thank you for that.
Absolutely.
FSR is, you can find us on the Twitters at FSR_Inc. And FSRinc.com. You got to make sure to do that, because if you go to FSR.com, you wind up at the Flying Saucer Research Lab.
That's not the same thing? I thought that was you guys all along.
Yeah. Hats has been ordering product from them for years and doesn't understand why it hasn't gotten to him yet.
Yeah, it's aliens.
Oh, God.
And you can find me on Twitter at George V. Fournier, because I just wanted to make a Twitter handle that was just so easy people could always find it easily.
Yeah, I screwed up George's Twitter handle twice now when in tagging him, so I still don't know who the other guy is. Mr. Hats, thank you, sir.
Oh, thank you, bud. Always a pleasure.
Absolutely. How do people find you or AVI Systems?
Well, more importantly is to find AVI Systems. AVIsystems.com, at AVI Systems on the Twitter. I do float around LinkedIn, Twitter a little bit, at Dave Hats AVI, but it's all really more about AVI than me. So.
Very good. And on that note, is more about AVNation than me. So go by the website if you would please, avnation.tv. avnation.tv. You will find this program, a host of others. I mentioned Mr. Hatch was on our State of Control earlier this week. That will be posting here in a couple of weeks. Also, if you're going to CEDIA, check us out. We'll be popping around the CEDIA show floor here in about 2 or 3 weeks. We're hosting our Tweet Up, which is a free food and drink for anybody, any sort of AV professional. It's on Thursday between 4 and 6 in the beer garden at the Convention Center. There's more information on the website. So check it out, avnation.tv, avnation.tv. Thanks so much for listening. Thanks so much for watching. This has been AV Week.